Hello everyone! We're going to be doing a tier list for 10.1. As per usual, gotta rank the new version. I put weapons on here early, and these might seem kind of low. I think these are generally seem kind of low. And so I want to start by answering why that is. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the better weapons in the game, and then kind of jump down, rank everything else. As always, it's my opinion, zones only, and I'm ranking like the main kit of each weapon. I'm assuming if you play a weapon, you can play all of its kits, and they're not really going to be different. I made an exception for Neosplash. That's it. Anyway, let's get started. So the reason everything seems like it's lower on the list is because I made the decision that this tier is going to have 2 weapons in it and nothing else. So X tier is going to be very, very exclusive in this list. But I feel like it's kind of fair. So, let's start with the most obvious weapon to get put in this tier ever. What would be in a tier all on its own right now? Anyone who's kept up with competitive Splatoon, anyone who's seen top-level players complaining about something on Twitter, what weapon comes to mind? It's S-Blast! Yes, S-Blast. S-Blast is, objectively, probably performing the best in the entire game. It is winning almost every tournament in Japan. Almost every big tournament in Japan is being won by S-Blast. In the Western scene, almost every big tournament is being won by S-Blast. In solo queue, it is the most common top 500 weapon. And, you know what, let's do this little experiment. Let me get my phone. I'm gonna get my phone right now. You guys can follow along. I saw this screenshot earlier, but I don't know if it'll still be like this. We're gonna open Splatnet. Alright? We're gonna open Splatnet. You guys can follow along with me if you want. I don't know if you guys are all bored. Or the Nintendo Switch app, whatever. I'm signed out? Okay, I'm not doing that. Someone in chat will have to tell me. I'm not signing in right now. That's going to take forever. Go check the leaderboard for each mode and see if the top weapon in every mode is S-Blast 91. Because it already has been multiple times this season and the previous season. Right now, it's number 1 in all modes except for Rainmaker, which is by a Doppel Dooley. Congrats to the Doppel for temporarily holding the title. Okay, point being, no matter what metric you want to look at, no matter what metric you want to look at here, S-Blast is probably winning it. It is just simply doing the best in practically every environment you could possibly ask for. And it also works with practically every comp style. If we look at the main mid lines, it works well with Mint, it works well with Stamper, and it especially works well with Bucket for double AoE. That's kind of the main thing it gets played with. It works well with Pen. It plays well with the leader comps. Pretty much the only thing you don't see it with is Rapid, which we'll talk about a little bit about later, because it's double blaster. That's really about it. It can be played with pretty much everything. So, it works with pretty much everything, and it's really good, and it's winning everything, and it's very popular. You know, very obvious pick, you know? Not really a huge surprise at the end of the day to see it up here. So the second one is going to be more opinionated. When I said there was 2 weapons, everyone in my chat said pencil, and everyone is wrong. The second weapon in this tier is Mint the Cavitator. This one is more my personal opinion. I can't just simply go and tell people to open their phones and let them see this weapon dominate like with this one. But I think Mint is pretty good. I think Mint has quite a few things going well for it, honestly. Like, there's quite... let me turn the music down for me a little bit. I know it's not that loud for you guys, but it is for me. So, Mint has a few things going for it. First off, when we talk about the main, like, 4 weapons, the 4 Slayers, which I'm going to talk about them all first, I think that it can get the most passive value. So, in other words, I think if you're doing, like, an S-Blast or a Stamper or whatever, they basically have to be the one approaching you. Someone already brought it up in my chat, which is when Toto was actively playing Area Cups, he also basically won everything with Mint. We've also seen another player that I'm not as familiar with. They're an S-Blast player. They're like 4K S-Blast. But they played with Lobster, and so they played Mint, and then they also won everything with Mint. And Mint just looks very good. It's the centerpiece of pretty much any dive composition. It works well with S-Blast if you want to play with S-Blast. You can play with Bucket. You can play with most everything just like with S-Blast. It's obviously more difficult. I think there's like a lot more things you have to manage because Mint has much more of a flexible playstyle. But it does so much that it can work with other weapons. It has better combo numbers. I think its kit is very flexible. Bubble is very strong with it. It's very good like at countering other bubbles. It counters object specials. Like everything besides AoE, it has some kind of access to. That and it's like a little bit slow. But I think like the better people get at Mint, the more we're realizing the skill ceiling of the weapon is like higher and higher. I personally just see a lot of potential in the gun. I know Fuzzy also said mint in its own tier at some point, so I know there's a few other people who are on this. But yeah, I think S-Blast and mint are my top 2 right now. That's kind of how I would put it there. So, next, I want to talk about the weapon that hides behind other powerful weapons, and that's Bucket. I'm going to rank Bucket next. Bucket is my number 3 weapon, but we're going to drop down a tier here. Slosher is kind of like infamous at this point in my head for hiding all the time, as like being behind one weapon that's slightly more crazy than it is, so it slips behind the scenes. Oh, Bucket's so good, but look at Range Blaster, but look at Squeezer, look at Stamper, look at S-Blast. Don't look at this weapon that is super fast, does a consistent 70 damage, has insane hitbox arcing, good range, and a powerful kit. So, Bucket's like right there. I think that Bucket doesn't work super well with dive stuff these days. I feel like more Bucket players are playing Dread when it comes to that. Strike is obviously still not a great special to have in combat, though it is still very good outside of that, and its zones cheesing potential is still unmatched if you're really good at it. Slider cheese is definitely easier to like consistently do, but if you're really good at strikes, you get much less punished with it. It is a lot harder to time, but like there's a few Bucket players who can do it consistently, and it's like very noticeable when I see it. So that's interesting. And then, you know, for the most part, I don't have too much to say about Bucket. Like, this is pretty standard. It hasn't changed that much. I still think it's pretty up there. Mainly, I think this is a great second weapon if you're playing with S-Blast. I think that's kind of the main thing Bucket wants right now. I think it's mostly a double AoE weapon is the main thing you want to pick it with, and it's not as flexible in other options. So between that and the special weakness, I think it being down here makes sense. Now, I'm going to rank Stamper right now, but there will be weapons in between Stamper and Slosher. So these tiers are going to be ordered. In fact, I should specify that this is ordered. This is ordered. And this will be ordered. But Stamper and Bucket will have some space between them, and we're going to get to that. So Stamper's going to be here. Bucket's better than Mint. Bucket is not better than Mint. No. I just went over that. But, like, I don't think it has, like, the playing with everything potential this has. This just has more things going for it, in my opinion. Anyway, Stamper's 4th. There will be weapons between these two. I just want to talk about this, like, quad center of weapons. Also, like, Stamper and Booyah Stamper are both, like, basically next to each other. I don't really care which one you think is better. Doesn't really change my opinion on them. They'd basically be in the same spot if I ranked all kits. Stamper can work with S-Blast. Doesn't really work with Mint. So, like here, there are, like, some duos you don't want to do as much. I think that Stamper is good for dive, obviously. Though it is a little awkward because you don't have bubble. I think that's kind of the main thing I see in a lot of dive compositions is the bubble is missing. A lot of times we've been seeing Dread filling in for it right now, but that's why Mint is better. This has a lot of range. Still got its damage combos. It has its usual things. Zip is a little more consistent. Also, wait, I don't have Henlo here. You're going to get a moderator here. Now your messages will get a little green in them. There you go. Anyway. Welcome in. Yeah, Stamper has its usual damage combos. It's good with dually stuff, which we'll talk about dually in a minute. It's fine at pairing with Bucket if you want to, but it's mainly a thing you do with dive compositions or you can pair with S-Blast. But it's much less common. We see it a good bit in the Western scene, but we don't see it a lot in Japan. We don't see it a lot in solo queue. It's not getting too many crazy results. But, like, it's done enough to where people can tell the weapon is still very good. It just needs, like, proper players to push it. But I would say there's a gap here, and we will be filling in other weapons. So now that we've talked about our main aggro center pieces of the comp, these 4 are kind of the main ones we've been seeing, and we have our 2 main comp styles, where we have our AoE stuff and we have our dive stuff, which is kind of the 2 main styles that, like, every team is playing right now. Now, I want to talk about support. So, for support, I want to talk about the idea of, like, the trends that we've had for a while, which is what I've been talking about mainly for the past 3 months. Support has been getting more fight-focused. It's been more important that they can skirmish longer or fight longer or any of that sort, right? That's been really important for it. So, which support is the winner of this trend? I think that there are 3 main winners. There are 3 supports that I would say have a good gap over all of the others, even though some of them are going to be ranked in the same tier. I do think 3 of them are better than all of the other ones. I'm not talking about anchors. We're not talking about pen yet. I'm just talking about supports. The number 1 support, in my opinion, and I'm finally getting to the propaganda now, Where is it? I don't even see where it is on here. It should be on here. Where is it? There it is. Mini! Mini is gonna go right here. Mini is my number 4 weapon in the game right now. I think Mini Splatling is extremely underrated. We don't see many people playing it, but when it does see use, it does well. Mini's been played with Mint S-Blast for results. Can probably be played with dually stuff, I think. You could probably just have it be the support for like most things and it would be good. Mini has a few things going for it. I'd say the most unique thing for Mini is Mini has the best overall kits in the entire game. So you have access to a bubble kit, you have access to a burst bomb hammer kit, you have access to a beacon Zuka kit. So like, you know, if you play with like, we saw like the Gluga mint stuff, you can run the beacons for the jump in. If you play it with like dive with a dually or a mint, you can play like Zimmy. If you want double bubble, you also have Zimmy for that, and this like shreds every other weapon's bubble output except for Junior, but this is much better than a Junior. And then other than that, it's just kind of crazy stat-wise. It does 32 damage a shot, which means this is comboing with Pen. That's pretty crazy. Like, Mini definitely wants to be with Pen most of the time, in my opinion. It has very high special output. It's very fast, which means it can live a lot while it's fighting people. It is a good way to stall out fights. I think it, like... The main thing I would say about this weapon is it's not, like, the most insane fighter out of all the supports, but it doesn't lose as much supportive power. Like, you still get a lot of specials and a lot of varied specials that you'd want from a typical support player, but unlike something like an End Splash or a V-Shot, you're not losing as much fighting power. You still get to keep that extra utility. So that's my number one support there. Number 2 is another new one, and that's NZAP. Now, this might be a little surprising. I haven't ranked NZAP super highly for a while, and I think I've kind of been overlooking the buffs that it's gotten. It's gotten better damage, so it has 30 damage, not 32, but enough to still work off of options. It's gotten faster. I think it's gotten more accurate, if I remember correctly. It's also more than clear with the Pen nerfs that it has better special output than Pen. So if you run Zap, you can out-cooler the other team if you're playing with like a leader or with a Whale Rapid or something like that, or double cooler with a Cooler Rapid or something like that. But for the most part, everything else is actually about what I said with Mini. It is a fast strafing weapon with solid range compared to something like Zap that can do like 30 damage, stuff like that. I think all of that is very good. It does also have one thing over Mini Splatling, which is it has a lethal bomb, because this is definitely the better main weapon. Has better damage, better mobility, slightly better range, that's worth the charge speed. But Mini does not have a lethal bomb. This weapon can actually just throw suction sometimes, and that's really nice and very helpful, so I think that's worth noting. And then we have our third dually. We have our third support, which is dually, and this is also going to go over sword. Splat dualies. Now, Splat dualies is a little different. Does have a very good flexible kit. Sometimes you'll see the bubble and splashdown kits as well. But in this case, these two offer a good bit of skirmishing and fighting power, while still keeping up paint. This weapon does paint less than an average support. If you're playing with dually, you need to make up for that. That's probably why it's with, like, Rapid a lot of the time. Or, sorry, with Pen a lot of the time. Or if you play with Rapid, you pair it with, like, a Dread to help cover the paint or something like that. The painting weakness will be more of a thing. However, out of all the supports in the game that are being picked right now, I'd argue this one is the best at fighting. It has dodge rolls for its own landing. It has dodge rolls for combat. It can arguably run QR gear if it wants to. It pairs very easily with a lot of other weapons. It still does 30 damage. Don't say pencil fell off, guys. We're doing supports first. Then we're doing anchors. Pencil's up next. So that's where this goes. That's how I see it. This is another good option. And I think these two want to play with Pen, and this wants to play with Rapid and Leader, right? So that's where, like, our kind of main ones are. There are other supports that are good. Even other supports we'll put in this tier. But I think these are the 3 main ones, and I'll talk about the others in a bit. So we have one role we haven't talked about, and that's Anchor. And there are 3 weapons by far better than all the other anchors in the game, and it's not even close. These 3 options are Rapid, and I do mean specifically this one, but we'll see Well Rapid a little bit, not enough to rank separately. E-Leader, which has been on the rise in the past 2 months, and I got a lot to say about that. And then we have our usual Overlord, which is Pencil. So we're going to be talking about these 3 weapons right here, and my ranking in them, and this is where this is going to get very opinionated, but we're going to be ranking these 3 next. Spoiler alert, they're all going in this tier. So, here's my thoughts. Is Henlo watching with the stream muted? Is he, like, saying hello because I put these all below these even though I haven't ranked them yet? I'm just pulling them out to talk about them. So, I think these weapons are really interesting because over the past few months, I think we formed a little bit of a rock, paper, scissors triangle here. Leader comps are very good at dealing with pen comps now. Zap gives them better cooler output, and Zap is now one of the better supports, so you can fight more. Leader obviously bullies this matchup. This is like one of the main things that give E-Leader its claim to fame, is that it can bully well against Pen. It adds a little bit more fighting power. Stuff like that is very good. But one of the other main developments, and this is something I'll talk more about when I do my video on E-Leader later this week. I think it comes out Sunday. I'll have a whole video talking about all the crazy shit E-Leader's done in the past 2 months. But one other thing that it has that is really notable is that E-Leader comps are now not special. This isn't dissing E-Leader by any means. What I mean is that the leader comps that we've seen doing well are just pencil comps. Leader's best results right now are with S-Blast and Bucket with a Zap. It's just the same structure you would run with a pen, but you now just have a leader instead. That's it. Also, my mic was far away. Whoops. Hopefully that fixed it. It's like, that's it. That's literally the main thing that's changed, is now that paint is, like, less important, and Zap paints, better than most supports. Leader and Zap kind of cover enough paint, and you can just run normal shit. You could run, like, Mint with Leader. You can run S-Blast Bucket with Leader. I think the only thing you might not want with Leader is Stamper. That's about it. However, in SWS, when Leader was bullying all of the pencils and doing really well, we saw Lobster's team switch off the most broken weapon in the game and start picking this. This weapon is much better at dealing with Leader. Yes, you don't have as much cooler output. However, Rapid is more mobile. It doesn't lose the matchup as bad. It can poke around corners because it has AoE, and it's very fast. So you can run an aggressive comp that can more quickly and easily get into cover and play around, having a support that has a way of moving the leader out of the way. You could either run really mobile weapons like Dooley, or you could run spam like, Zuka mini spiling or shot or something like that. So Rapid does well into the leader and deals with it if leader starts to, like, bully the pen. We saw Rapid end up winning SWS, again, with the comp specialized to deal with leader. However, as we get to rock, paper, scissors here, you might imagine what I'm going to be getting to next, which is, guess what ends up dealing with the Rapid really well? It's the Pencil. Pencil does still, the matchups are more than I'm making them out to be in this video, obviously. There's definitely some complexity there, but generally, Pen can get a lot more passive value than E-Leader can, because it can just paint. It has a bit more mobility, a bit of an easier time dealing with it, and then it can take advantage of the better cooler output without having it to be a Zap that'll get ran down more with a Rapid comp. That's kind of the problem with Leader Zap when going against Rapid. There's more things that'll take down the end Zap and get rid of its cooler output. Pencil, on the other hand, will consistently outcooler the Rapid without as much danger. And so we have our little rock, paper, scissors dynamic here, That's kind of what we've been seeing. E-Leader's been doing really well, but it's this back and forth. And yes, this is a good thing. This is fine, because these are all winnable. The leader team can beat the Rapid, Rapid can beat the Pen, Pen can beat the leader. Like, none of these are that extreme. But there are these small little advantages that we've been seeing here. Now the question is, how do we settle the tie here? If these all deal with each other in some way, how do we decide which is better and which is not? So, let me tell you which one I think is in last place out of these three. And it's going to be a good bit lower on the list than the others. And that is Rapid. I'm going to put Rapid all the way over here. I think Rapid in all modes is more even with these two, and is still very close. But I think Rapid has one big disadvantage to it. Or, it has a few disadvantages, but I think it has one big disadvantage. Running Rapid locks you out of running S-Blast, which is the best weapon in the game. Or maybe it doesn't lock you out, maybe you could run it, but, like, this is kind of awkward, running these two together. We haven't really seen it, So that's one problem. I'd also say that Rapid comps are probably one of the more difficult ones. You have to deal with a lower cooler output or the consequences of having double cooler, which can be a little bit tricky. So I think its comps are a little bit more limited. So I think like those factors together are very small, but when put together, I think, you know, contributes to Rapid having a bit of a smaller disadvantage. That and like Rapid has to work a bit more for its plays, I think. It really has to make sure it's like poking and in position, even if it's very good at doing that. Where I think these weapons can kind of turtle and be okay. Just kind of defensively sit in a reasonable position, you know, and do that kind of thing. Anyway. Why don't you think S Plus works with Rapid? It's just Double Blast. So, the safe pick for me to do here would be to say that Pencil is better than Leader. And if I rank it the opposite, it's going to look like I'm super biased in Moonlight's favor because we started picking E-Leader. But I've held this opinion for longer. I've held this opinion since scripting the E-Leader video, basically. I scripted the E-Leader video a bit before I left for Riptide, if I remember correctly. And that opinion is that I think the order of these weapons is this and this. I think that E-Leader is better than Pen. This is my hot take of the list right here. This is my hot take. This is my Pandora's box. For Zone specifically, I feel like that Leader is better. And it's for a few things. Again, one, Leader can run all of these weapons. It can have all of them. I don't think you're really locked out of anything by running Leader like you could before. And it does well into Pen, and Pen is very common, so I feel like that is strong. And then Zap is the third reason, where I think Zap is already really good as a support. Like, I only think this one is better due to the trends that we've been seeing. And I feel like Zap is very strong, and I feel like it works very well with all of these weapons, to be very specific. Like, I feel like a Zap, like something I've noticed like watching other E-Leader comps, because we don't run like Bucket S Blast, but I've watched like Gray's team play with a Leader, for instance. It is very hard to fight the Zap with these weapons with it because of the damage number that it has. It's very interesting. Melon and Dynamon made a tier list and Leader was X tier and Pen was S plus, take that as you will. Okay, but that's a solo queue list. I don't know if they'd rank it that way for tournaments. I'm pretty sure that's X rank list. But yeah, I mean, the opinion of Leader has been rising. It has been doing better. It has won Area Cup. It has done well in SWS. It's even done well over here. And I will talk about it more in its own video. I have a video on Leader coming out later. So I will talk about it later in that video in more detail. This is kind of the short version. When this uploads on YouTube, though, that video should already be out because this is probably going to be posted on Sunday. So, you know, for now, that's all you need to know. That's where we're at. And yes, I do think it's better. Do I think the game is cooked because of Leader? Not really. I also don't like, you know, it's again going to sound like Moonlight bias because of it, but I think that Leader comps aren't too bad to deal with, mostly because of Cooler and other displacement specials, but also, we'll see. We have to play, you know, so. Anyway. That's all of that. Let's finish out this tier real quick, because this tier isn't even done yet. There's two more weapons I want to talk about before we completely wrap this up. Completely wrap up this tier, and then we'll start to go faster through the rest of the list, because I don't have as much to say. Alright. The other two weapons in S Plus are Dread and Splash. These are the other two weapons that I think goes here. And these two could go like higher or lower, depending on how they develop in the future. So, Dread. I haven't seen Grand Roll play many tournaments recently. So, you know, we'll take a look at that later. But if I look at Dreadringer right now, I see its main utility as dive. We've been seeing it experimented more with Dually Sword, and it being ran like that. Obviously, it's been getting good results outside of that. But that's what I think it needs to be ranked higher to me. Because this is like, I know what comps this wants to play. I can look at these three supports and see the staples in which they're like guaranteed to be picked. This is still a wild card. Like, is Dually Mint Mini just better than this? Or does this have other utility? I think that obviously it has Reef Slider. Reef Slider damage is still very good to play off of. I think Reef Slider helps it be more aggressive. I think the damage utility of Dread is very good. However, These are very fast weapons. The other supports are very fast, very quick to move around, and so it's a little bit harder for Dread to fight. And I also think both Rapid and E-Leader getting better is tricky for this. I think that E-Leader is pretty good into Dread. It can limit the positions it wants to play. Rapid is nice to play with Dreadringer, but Rapid is also very good against Dreadringer. It's able to, like, trap it in place more easily because of the slower fire rate. So it's kind of like a mixed bag. It goes both ways, where I think that Rapid is both good and bad for it. So the trends are, can this weapon prove its fighting capabilities? Can it prove it's a staple of dive compositions and that it works really well with, like, dually sword stuff? If I see, like, FT Win doing better with, like, Dread, you know, basically these 4 weapons is FT Win's comp. If I see FT Win playing that and, you know, using it and doing well with it more, then I could see this stuff going higher. But as of right now, Dread as, like, a dive support is still, like, relatively unproven. I do believe in it, obviously. I am the Dread player here, so I'm a little biased. But I think we'll have to wait and see if this is really, like, a staple or not. We really will have to wait and see. And then the last one up here is Splash. And I basically put Splash here in good faith. Normally, if the patch didn't happen, Splash would be down here. Like 100% I would have put it down here. However, they buffed its range. So it's a little bit better at fighting now. And that makes me think that maybe it can be up here again. Maybe. I still think that it's in this awkward middle ground where it doesn't skirmish as well as these weapons because of the damage number and the lack of range, but it also doesn't fight as well as something like a dually. And really the only thing giving it some, you know, unique utility is the burst bomb, right? But even then, if I have a crab, this thing can fight out of its crab in like a billion more unique ways than this one can, right? And Dread is mostly using the slider kit. So this is basically good faith. In fact, you know what? My good faith is run out. We're going to put it down here. All right, you know what? The more I've talked about it, the more I think this is still, like, it's just not as specialized. Does that make sense, right? Like, I don't know if this makes sense or not. I think that Splash, like, whatever you're picking it for, I think there's a weapon that does it slightly better. It's not bad by any means. It's still very good. But I don't see it having, like, quite the same utility as the other supports. And speaking of which, that's also kind of how I feel about Pro. Pro does have some flexibility, because Forge and V-Pro are also pretty solid. However, I think Pro is like a bit of the same problem. It fights well. It's good with specific weapons because of its fighting power. It's like dually in the sense of you lose out on paint, but you have better fighting power than most supports do. But the special output on missiles is just kind of bad. Like, it still feels low after I've seen it for a while. It still feels like the cooldown is a big problem. And then the other kits I just think aren't as good. I like Booyah Bomb a little bit more on a Slayer weapon than a support. And then Dart on this thing is bad. I'm sorry, Dart fans. Dart drags down the V-Pro kit, even if it's 180p. So, you know. That's how I see these two. They're both still good. I could see them being picked and doing well, you know. So, yeah, that's how I see it. Okay. And after that, I really don't have as much to say about a lot of these other than some of the new stuff. Am I missing? No, okay. So let's speed run the rest of this tier. Other relevant weapons. Wiper. I think that Wiper is doing a little bit better now. It's very mobile. I can see it slotting in with dive comps more easily. I think that Hammer is getting a lot of good value overall. Just think Wiper is doing its normal thing, and its normal thing is pretty good. Roller. Lack of player representatives has dragged it down, but I don't really see it being like a big problem. Again, it's very easy to slot into comps. It's still a good bubble weapon. You could play it with like Min or something like that. It's probably fine. Tri-Slosher. I think it's very easy for bucket players to flex to it. I think it's good for like niche picks, like as a second cooler in a rapid comp, or if you want like screen for sharking weapons. I think there's plenty of reasons you could pick either of these, and I can see them. And then last up in this tier is Edit. And Edit is like barely clinging on to top tier status in my eyes. Guys, Edit hasn't done anything lately. Like, I think Kyo talked about this as well, but like, do you guys remember the last notable thing Edit did? Because I don't. It's been a long time since Edit's done something. And I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe it's all the Smiling players are jumping on this right now. Maybe. But in general, just like, I'm not I'm not seeing it. I'm not really seeing it do a whole lot lately. It seems like it's trending worse and worse. And like, I don't know. I don't see the utility of this at the end of the day. It also seems awkward with the supports. Like, I think Dooley prefers to have Pen, Zap doesn't want to play with an edit, and Mini doesn't want to play with an edit. So, like, what support do you pick this with? I guess you pick it with, like, V-Dread or Splash. But, like, these are your weaker support options if you're picking it with those. That's not a good sign. So, like, yeah, I don't know. I'm looking at it and I'm like, yeah, no. Romario used an SCBS? No, I don't think he did. I'm pretty sure, like, he barely picked it. They did, like, Rapid and Zap. I didn't even see much edit out of them when they went SWS. It's, like, legit. I don't know what's going on with edit, but, like, it's kind of not there. Okay, hold on. I'm running out of my music. Let me switch the song. We're going to just loop the playlist. I'm going to be lazy. Also, I like this song, so we're going to hear it again. Yeah. Yo, thank you so much for the sub. I appreciate it. Alright. And that's that tier done. That's about all I have to say about this. So from here, I'm going to speedrun A and B tier. I don't have a whole lot to talk about it. We're just going to put weapons there. And I will talk about a few of them. So let's rank all the usual stuff first, you know. Weapons that I believe haven't really changed a whole lot. Kind of go in their usual spots. Range, I think, is falling off, but this is about how good it was if you were going to pick it instead of S-Blast for some strange reason. Nautilus's rain buff, I think, helped, but not that much. Again, I don't see a whole lot of utility to pick it. Beluga could probably be higher if Tiramisu was still playing the game, but I haven't seen him show up at all, so there we go. And then, let's see, other tier. Got Junior. I think Junior's lack of fighting utility is still a big problem right now. Unfortunately, I think Dually Squelchers have dropped off a bit. They haven't done anything recently. I haven't seen any Dually Squelcher player making a run. And, like, everyone's, you know, generally having more weapons that kill fast, so I haven't seen a way to play around it. I will say, if there is a future for this weapon, it's probably with Pro. Because Pro and Dually Squelcher's damage numbers combo nicely together. So maybe there's a chance with that, but I need to see something. Also, did I forget Dapple? I forgot Dapple. Dapple goes up here, by the way. My bad. Charger here. I'm going to put Bamboo back down here, actually. I think Bamboo's not that crazy right now. Maybe hot take. Charger, I'm ranking VacChar as the main kit, which might seem a little crazy, but here's my thought process with VacChar on zones. I don't think we'd ever see it picked. It's just, if you're going to pick Charger instead of E-Liter, you're picking it to play really aggressive. And this is the only kit it has that I think can be that aggressive. That's kind of how I see it, if that makes sense. Incline has actually been getting kind of results lately, and Reflux I believe in. And now we can talk about the Brellas. Where do our two new Brellas go after all the buffs and developments and everything? How high are we going to rank them? So, let's start with this one. Let's start with Reg Brella. I'm going to put Reg Brella in B. I don't care if it's this one or the Jetpack kit. I think it's in B. So, lower than I was hyping it up to be. You know, I thought that's, like, potentially where it could be. So, what's my problem with Brella? What's my problem with it? I just don't think it has enough fighting utility. And, like, that would have been okay if the kits were there. And that's my other problem. That's the thing I missed about Brella. I don't even think it's the matchups, because you can paint really well. Here's my problem. I don't like its kits in this meta. You have two options here with Brella. One is you pick the Jetpack kit. The Jetpack kit will demand gear from you to have a mediocre special that gets countered too heavily. Like, it doesn't fight well enough into these meta options. And, like, most of the things that people are going to pick into Brella, if they pick, like, Blaster or Pen or whatever, are also going to shit on the Jetpack. Leader will shit on the Jetpack. Rapid will, like, demolish the Jetpack. All of them will. But that allows you to fight more. You know, you have a kit that lets you keep momentum going. Or you pick the Strike kit. And if you pick the Strike kit, well, great, you have a special now. But your kit doesn't help you with fighting at all. You have no extra damage from your sub and special, no survivability, no extra utility, nothing. You are relying solely on the main weapon's damage. And it's not good. Is it a lot better than before? Absolutely. I think it can win a tournament. I think it's viable. I think any of these weapons can win a tournament still. I think it could even be higher. It pains me to rank End Splash above this, because I think in theory this should be better. However, the problems are vast. And we will see. Maybe some mechanical Brella warlord will be able to prove me wrong and can fight well enough with it to make it work. But I think the fighting utility and the kits combined just barely keep it out of the highest tiers. However, I do believe a little more in Recycle. I'm going to put Recycle up here. I think Recycle is a little bit of a hidden gem, guys. I see the vision in this weapon. I do see it. Like, it's kind of difficult to explain. But Recycle can honestly just, like... The shield regen is so fast that, like, it can tank some of the one-shots very well. It paints very well, honestly. It gets bubble, which it has good utility out of it. The only bad thing is the dart. Like, everything about the weapon's pretty good. And if you can hit your shots, it does a lot of damage. It's very self-sufficient. You can run either like a quick respawn set or like a charge up hybrid set, like how Hint the Cavitators do. Stuff like that, you know? So, I'm not exactly sure here. But I'd say Recycle has potential. I think in particular it's kind of nice into S-Blast, and if there's any weapon that's going to be an argument for it, I think this is a pretty good one. Just because it can stop S-Blast from blowing people up, like between the bubble and the shield, I think it has a lot of utility to like actually slow S-Blast down, and it paints better than it enough to where S-Blast has to take the engage a lot of the time. I could see it doing well. We'll have to see someone actually use it, however, I could see it. So that's my thoughts, right? Obviously there's some personal stuff here, like some heavy predictions I'm making, like with the mini splatling stuff and the E-liter stuff, but that's where my thoughts lie on it right now. You know, it could change later. I put a bit more of my personal opinion into this list than normal. Did Hypernova's win with Big Swig impact your view on the weapon? It made me think it's really good into Tent, but my opinion of Tent has been going nothing but down since like 10.0. So I think it's like one of those cases where it's really just how I view Tent. I feel like Tent is normally a weapon that you don't swap off unless you absolutely have to, and I think there's more cases where you have to, and I think that's what Swig plays into. I think Swig is good at creating scenarios where the Tent player has to switch. And that's awkward for playing Tent. But, like, if there's no, like, Tent, then I don't really care. But this isn't, like, dropped off to me. It's just that this tier is 2 weapons, so everything else is down 1. Like, this would normally be C tier in another list of mine. But because I made X rank so restrictive, like, everything here is kind of bumped down. And seems a little harsher. And then my viability line would be here. Like, around here. Actually, maybe C. Maybe this is my viability line. I'm not sure. You know what? I'm not even going to draw a viability line. It's too early. Whatever. Oh, yeah, and I forgot Clash. Hold on. Clash isn't on the list. Are you ready, guys? And done. Okay, Clash is on the list now. Is there any other weapon I forgot before I publish this list, by the way, chat? Is there anything I missed? Is there any weapon not here? I forgot Clash, like, the entire time. It wasn't even on the ranking. So, my bad. There it is. Clash is on the list now, guys. Hooray. Alright. Missed earlier parts. Why is Mint higher? I'll leave the VOD up on the channel for a bit so you guys can go and take a look at the earlier segment. My voice is dead. Squiffer's not on the list. This hurts me more than it hurts you guys, but I'm gonna put it here. I haven't seen anything from Squiffer. I want to have faith. It's so cool, but, like, Squiffer might be cooked in this game. I can't put it as high as Bamboo. I think Bamboo is clearly better. I cannot put it in the same tier. Okay, is there any other weapon I missed? Small Blaster? That's right here. Heavy? That's right here. Carried by MPU? Dude, it low-key was. I'm not gonna lie. MPU low-key boosted the hell out of Squiffer. That and 170p, like 180p. Its special points are also higher in this game. Like, losing both sucked. Alright, I think that's about it. So yeah, that's my ranking. We'll see how it ages well. This is definitely a bolder list of mine, so maybe in like 2 months I'll absolutely despise this list. But who knows? That's why you make this. It's fun.